All right, so hopefully you're in the right room. This is packaging for motion design and live events. We're gonna go ahead and go through some of this stuff. It should be pretty interesting. I'll get this out of the way. At the top, it's a cowboy kimono, is what they call it. That way they can cut that part out. Thank you. Yeah. That way they can cut that part out, and everything will be fine after that. But thank you. So, all right. Introduction. We'll kind of go through who we are and what we're going to talk about, and then we'll talk about it, and then we'll recap what we did. Right? That's kind of usually how this rolls. So, in case you don't know who I am, I'm Patrick Wombold, and I've got with me my esteemed colleague.
Hello, Danny Tello.
All right, right on. And so currently I'm working as a business consultant as well as a product director at Geotech, but a lot of people remember I used to work at Epic for about 4 years doing something over there as solution architect of whatever that means. But yeah, so now I get to go and do the same thing just on the outside. So I still get to work with all my friends, working on mostly live events, broadcast, and location-based entertainment. And we're excited to talk about the motion design tools today. Danny, you want to give yourself a quick little intro?
Sure, yeah, thank you. I'm Danny Tello. I worked in broadcast for 10 years at Fox Sports. And during that time, basically, we started using real-time engines for all of the insert graphics studio shows and transitioned into Unreal Engine and found a passion for it and kind of branched off and started doing my own thing.
Okay. All right, sweet, awesome. And so I'll give a brief thing in case you don't know who Geotech is. I have a lot of them in the front row here with me today, which is great. They all came, I love it. But so they're a team of developers, mostly specialized in Unreal at this point, but they also work in all kinds of other areas like our awesome Assist 4D tool. So we'll get a quick little plug there. But I originally met them when I was working on the DMX tools a long time ago, but since then they kind of work on various parts of the engine. Motion Design Tools being, I think, probably the most recent and probably largest scope one that I can think of. I don't know. But yeah, so, and then also, we also work with other clients too, to help anybody who's looking for Unreal development help, whether or not it's inside, in an artistic capacity or it's a development capacity typically. Tell us about Emissive Labs.
Yeah. So a few years ago, about 3 years ago, when I left Fox, we started a company called Chauncey Live, which was a kind of data integration tool for Unreal Engine. We just saw that there was like a real like a need that was coming up to connect applications, to connect data into Unreal, not just for broadcast and live events, but just for all kinds of industries. And so that product that we built, Chauncey, is still running, but we kind of spun it off into a creative lab, which now we call Emissive Labs, because the proof is in the pudding, and we found after we built the product, we kind of needed to have case studies and use cases for it. So we're just a small team based in Los Angeles, California, and we come from different backgrounds, mine being broadcast, some from arena and live events, and others in marketing and that sort of thing. So.
Cool. Yeah. I actually originally met him when I was still at Epic, so it's good again everybody's still kind of friends here. So I saw my buddy do this yesterday, kind of show of hands. I'm curious, like who here actually has been using the motion design tools at all?
Nice.
Okay, that's freaking great. Okay, glad to hear that. Who here is actually packaging and shipping with motion design tools?
Nice.
It is experimental. You should not do that.
Come on up.
Be very, very clear. That was a trick question. Okay, until I think yesterday, right? So 5, 6, right now I think it's ready to ship. But yeah, that was kind of a trick question because yeah, technically speaking, you should definitely not do that. But we're going to talk about why we did it anyway. So we'll go over just a little bit about what it is, kind of some of the feature sets that we were really interested in and why we did it, and then go through a little bit about how that process should work. So firstly, we'll talk about just kind of some of the parts of it that are kind of in there that we were kind of really after, at least I was after. I know Danny had a different set of things he was after. But one of the big things for me was end display. I work mostly in live events, so anything that is using multiple displays, it's kind of a key feature for me. In trying to get motion design tools to work with that has definitely been a challenge, as some of our friends can attest to over here. But it's really fun. And then a lot of these other tools like transition logic and using network API, same thing. Like we're always trying to control it with something else. Like it's very, very rare that we are actually going to use an editor to control something. So this is why packaging kind of made sense for us, maybe more than other people. But the editor tooling and all these things that they've kind of just I think now they're just in the general editor, which is really, really nice. But so the main question, all right, to package or not to package, right? Like, why would we do this? Because I find most people, when they work, especially in media and entertainment, they don't even know like this exists. Like they don't touch it. They work in the editor almost entirely. If they could hit play and it would just work, that would be their choice. But there's some very good reasons why you would want to package this, and some very good reasons maybe not to. So we're going to kind of look at some of those things. I know you've had some experience on both sides of it, right? Some of you work in the editor some, but also most of the stuff now you're packaging?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our entire creative workflow is obviously in editor, and we love it, and we use it every day. It's just a decision that you kind of make based on the client, what they're looking for, how you're going to deliver it to them, the control mechanisms, and we kind of get into all of that in here. But yeah, it's you just kind of weigh the options based on the output you're looking for.
Absolutely. So this is the meat and potatoes of this entire slide. We could literally just talk about this the entire rest of the time, but I'm not going to read it to you because I assume you can all read. But the benefits are quite large, and for me, they're pretty simple. One is deployment and one is performance, right? And so if you're trying to deploy, say something like here, imagine digital signage, right? Do you want to install the editor on every single box? Do you know how long it takes to install the editor on every box? It's really not a fun process. Is the editor even free anymore? We have to ask Craig in the back if that's true or not. It depends, right? It depends on what you are and what you're doing. And so that's one of the things that really was in my mind specifically, mostly though, performance and deployment, right? Because it's like, there's very obvious things about shipping an editor versus a package game, but there were some other things that I know you had on your mind, especially when you talked about clients that you're working with.
Yeah, I mean, the technical considerations are definitely real, and we thought a lot about that at the beginning of the project that we'll go into at the end of this. But ultimately, like the first decision and discussion we had was, how are we going to deploy this to the client, and what are the expectations that they're going to have to be able to run it and execute it and update it. And so I think a lot of the decision making that we've made in the products that we deliver, not just the motion graphics, but the products that we deliver, is kind of encompassed in that train of thought.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, the benefits are really, really large. However, so are some of the challenges. I know most of us, the first time we experience this is probably by accident, right? We need to zip a project, and that's the first time we see how the packaging cooking system works. And when you get that awful sound that it failed, which is the opposite of toast, right? Toast is when it succeeds. It's the opposite of that. It's just one of those things that, again, like I feel like people just really, if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, they just kind of move on and don't ever really touch it ever again. But for a lot of people who aren't in this industry, especially media entertainment, when they see Unreal Engine the first time, they don't even know it exists, right? They're playing a packaged game, and unless somebody left the logo in the beginning, they might not even know it's Unreal, right? And so it was really designed for that. Like the entire engine is designed to ship something. And so by kind of bypassing that, you're not really getting all of it that you could out of it. So we'll kind of go through some of the things that maybe we had to think about when we did this, but it does take time, right? And time is always our enemy, right? In any industry, but especially in live events, it is always the enemy, whether it's latency, or whether it's shipping times, or whether it's whatever. But it does take time to do it. However, we're going to show you some things that'll kind of hopefully make that a little easier, make it a little less painful going through it. But it definitely is something that you do have to think about, right? It's not something that, unfortunately, you just hit the button and it just works. Sometimes it does. And if it doesn't, now you can ask ChatGPT why it failed. and I highly recommend that, by the way. Because like literally you can just copy and paste the error message in there and it will probably tell you how to fix it, which is great. Anything specific you wanted to mention?
No, I mean, like, I've kind of mentioned, obviously, the client thought process. The build size is a big one. We kind of go into that a bit. And yeah, like I'm a technical artist. I work in editor, mainly a motion graphics designer. And so, packaging a project is not something I would approach on my own. Obviously, we have a team, and our CTO, Akshay, at our company, has made this much more approachable. But I think, like you mentioned, like the GPT, the AIs, and the documentation, I should say, that's out there definitely help, to make this something that you may want to consider.
All right, you got to thank David for some of that stuff, right? He does a lot of the DOS. All right, so, but for me, yeah, this one was the big one, right? Like, when talking about distribution, the editor size in 5.4, assuming you don't turn on the debug symbols, which is another 50 gigabytes, and you don't turn on any other platform, is 35 gigs for the engine. And that is being conservative, honestly. I took the Motion Design package, didn't touch a thing, and just hit package. We got 1.3 gigabytes out of it. So we could definitely trim that down some more, but it's significant to say the least. And so when you're trying to distribute, especially for something that's a very large installation, think like a theme park, think like a big round venue in the desert, something like that, you might not want to have to ship 35 gigs of stuff on top of whatever your project is. The project is also probably massive. And this is something else that I think comes up a lot is, how do we share a project in a situation like this? And most people, we start using source control, but do you really want to dump your entire project on somebody else's machine? There's a lot of legal concerns around that I hopefully don't have to get into, especially if you work in film. MPAA would really not appreciate that kind of stuff. But at the same time, like, this one for me was just so obvious that anytime I was trying to distribute an editor plus project to any more than, say, like 3 PCs, like, I'm not very happy. Like, I'm going to have a bad time. Oddly enough, just transferring files can be really daunting, especially if imagine their internet connection. How good can it possibly be? Do people have 100 gig connections all over the place? Not as many as you would think. I bet this convention center probably doesn't really have it either. Just as a side note, but I don't know, this is a big one for me.
Yeah, the other thing is, like, when we started our project that we get into, Venue 4D, the first thing that you guys suggested was you don't have to have all the plugins that come with the starter projects and enabled. And so you can even trim this down even further just to start by taking a look at what plugins and things are enabled before you start your project. And if it's stuff you don't need, shipping for mobile and different things, you can trim it down quite a bit even from there.
And I also want to be very clear too, I did this in development shipping mode, right? So if I turned it into actual shipping, it would probably be half this size, right? Because there's still debug tools and all these things that are enabled when you just use that. But I wanted to be able to get a stat on it, so I was like, all right, I'll leave it on, let's just see what happens. But for me, this was significant enough for me to go into it. But the second thing is, how fast is it? This is something that, again, like, I feel like, especially in artist-heavy environments, media entertainment specifically, people are always thinking that they're GPU bound, and they are. That's not untrue. But at the same time, the faster you can do things on the game thread, the faster it queues to everything else. It does kind of cascade downward, right? So if I can queue it faster to the RHI, and that goes to GPU quicker, it's better. And so I did this. I literally just opened up the editor on my laptop and just looked at it. It's about 10 milliseconds game time in the editor, less than 2 milliseconds. And again, that's in development. If I did it in shipping, it would probably be less than 1. And this is very, very typical. This is not just something random. This happens all the time. And so I even grabbed a screenshot just so that I could show it. But same thing, like, it's literally twice as fast. And something else that's interesting too is when you're not running the editor, you don't have to worry about touching the UI, right? The UI in Slate is very slow sometimes, depending on what thing you're hovering over. And so this, again, I wasn't doing that in this case. I put it full screen, but on the left, literally full screen. It's just the Motion Design project. I just opened it up, ran it full screen, took a screenshot. And same thing on the right, just packaged it, throw it in there, same thing. It's extremely significant. And so this is something that was really, really high in my mind, especially when we're trying to squeeze every ounce of performance out of it. If I can shave off 8 milliseconds, there is no optimization in the world that I can do that's going to be that good. So I don't know. For me, it was big.
Yeah, no, I think you summarized it well.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, we'll roll. So specific to packaging motion design, though, again, as I mentioned before, it's experimental, so there are certain things you have to kind of keep in mind. But at the same time, it's not that big of a set of things, right? So I put it in here just as a reminder again, but yeah, make sure you know kind of what you are trying to ship. If you are trying to ship, say, cloners in 5.5.4, they might not work. But I think they work now, right? I don't know. Again, something that you should just be aware of is that there will be certain features and things that are removed because it is stripping out 30-something gigs of stuff. So there will be some things that you need to check and look for. But some other things to consider is whether or not you're going to actually just ship entire applications or you want to have it be broken up into pieces. And this is something I know you guys spent a lot of time kind of going through is like how you wanted to distribute it. So maybe just touch on that for a sec.
Yeah, for sure. I'll get into Venue 4D, which is the project you're referencing, and basically we wanted to deliver somewhat of like a console in the sense that like we wanted a base application that we can deliver and then be able to sideload content and distribute that content to them really easily and in a streamlined method. And so, if we, talk about hundreds or even thousands of clients, how are we going to maintain all of the assets that they're going to need, all of the graphics they're going to need updates to in a scalable way? And so that's where the paks come in. And there's a few different solutions for dealing with that, but it does make you consider how you're organizing your project, what's being included in each one of the builds that you're doing, content only versus the entire application. So.
Yeah, and another thing definitely was build targets, right? Because again, like I work pretty much usually in a Windows-only environment. However, that's not the case for a lot of people that are trying to package something like Motion Design Tools. They might be trying to ship on mobile, which is fun. HMI is another one. I know people were very desperate to try and get some of these features into there. So again, I can't say that it will or won't work all the time, but it is just something to be aware of. Just because it compiles doesn't necessarily mean you're going to see anything. So that's where this QA testing kind of, to me, became a little bit more of a hindrance, is because you really do have to look at things. Like it's not just oh, sweet, build finished, we're good to go. It does require a visual check. However, something else that I really love about a package build is you don't get generating mesh cards. You don't get generating distance fields. You don't get all of these messages every time you open the project. You don't have to run everything. Generally speaking, once it's actually compiled all the shaders in the first time, you kind of don't have to do a whole lot. And especially when you do like what Danny's talking about, where you have your paks loaded in from the side, like once the base application is running, if that has all of your master materials and all the things inside of it already, you're kind of good to go. And you can literally hot load content and not have to do any of this stuff. So that is a super thing. But package early, package often. Waiting to the last minute to package is just as bad as waiting to optimize at the last minute. And this is something I find a lot of people kind of push off to the end. They're like, well, we didn't get a build server up yet. We didn't want to do it yet. But I can't stress this enough. Just hit the button. Like the more you hit the button, the faster it goes. It's kind of seems silly to me, but it's smart. The system knows what has and hasn't been packaged already, and so it's not going to do it all over again unless you force it to. But this is something that I know a lot of people, again, they're like, well, we know we need to do it, but we just, hit the button, just get it going, find out what the errors are going to be, find out where the pain points are going to be. If you do it early enough, you will not be in nearly as much pain at the end. I know we've talked about this a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. All right, so distributing these paks, what are they? All right, so packaging can be scary, right? Like I said, a lot of the people I work with are artists. They have no idea when an error comes up and it says something about a PSO cache, like what the heck that is. And I don't necessarily know either. Luckily, I work with a team of engineers and they can do it for me usually, but not everybody has that luxury. And so now I feel like more than ever though, leverage the tools that are out there. There is good documentation on a lot of this stuff, but ChatGPT is your friend, or some other engine. You can pretty much stick it in anything and it will probably know, because Unreal Codebase is very easy for these things to scrape, right? So, but chunks are your friend. I don't know if you guys know the kind of what these are, but when we talk about creating pak files, really what you're looking at is how are you going to chunk up your application? Like what parts do you need to be in the base application versus what does it need to be something that you're going to update? These are things that you want to think about probably earlier. And again, this does come down to kind of project organization. But if you use them and you're going to kind of separate it out in a nice, concise way, which I know he's going to talk about how they did it on some of their projects, it really does make the process go a lot faster, because then you don't have to ship a base application every time. You can just have one like thin client that runs and then just update it with either pak files or, in some cases, externally referenced files.
Yeah.
And we'll go over a little bit of that. Oh, and there we go. So
Yeah.
that's the next slide. Perfect.
Yes. So this is an example of what we ended up with for kind of our content organization in terms of different paks. There were kind of three main pieces in chunks, like Patrick mentioned. There's the base application, which I kind of reference as like the console. It's just kind of a blank, empty engine ready for anything to be loaded into it within the confines of the game that you're developing, or in our case, the motion graphics system. So for us, that ends up being like the core blueprints, game instance, everything that you would expect to be needed in the game across all of the different graphics, the master materials, the default textures, like the placeholder textures you always see with that kind of green bubbly one. The engine, all the engine content, the green bubbly one.
Yeah, of course. Everybody loves
pops
that one.
up. I'm like, God.
I replaced that one with something that is way nasty.
Oh, I should do that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's the base application. When we ship it, it's not ready to run any games or anything in particular, or any motion graphics. The content paks are content only. That's what they are. They could be a plugin. You can organize them as plugins. But what we put in ours are, basically they're scene related. So it's anything that is needed within that scene. Static meshes, kit bash objects and assets if you're using them, material instances, and this is where there's some referencing going on. So the material instances can be based off the master, and then they can be packed separately and reference those. So in our case, like I said, the console is kind of the base app, and then each one of our motion graphics packages, which we deliver, is kind of a separate content pack, and that allows us to kind of modularly update or upload those to kind of a content hub that our end users can download and sideload into the engine like a cartridge. So yeah, those are the two big ones. And then team elements is kind of an optional. It's really more of kind of a, how would I explain it? It's more of kind of the client assets, if you will. And so when we onboard a client, what we'll do is kind of talk to them, figure out what they're looking for. If they need a custom package built for them, we typically build some assets that aren't really a scene, but they may be needed to be used across multiple scenes, and so those could be loaded as a side. So this is just an example. It may not work for your specific use, but this is a way that when we package, we strategically think about how we're organizing these assets in this way.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because a lot of the places that I'm working at, actually, we won't do, I guess, the content pack part of it so much. We will just replace the base application over and over again because we're lazy, mostly.
Yeah, and I think like if you're wondering why you have to do this, why would you do this? When we have a client that, we have multiple clients, we don't want to deliver the entire application every time. That's the gist of it, right? That's the bottom line, is you don't want to, you have a new graphic, you don't want to deliver them an entire application, you just want to sideload the content. So should have mentioned that up front.
Definitely. Well, yeah, it's just, like I said, we will go, if we need to do stuff like that, like you said, on kind of your team elements column here, like that's where we'll go mostly, and we'll just like stream in, like whether it's a texture or something like that, we'll just take that from somewhere else. But either way, it can be done any number of ways, but it's just most important to think about this a little bit ahead of time, because again, like it will be more painful if you figure it out later. I'll just say that. So, yeah, and again, don't be afraid of this part of the editor. I know a lot of times, like I said, there's so many people that I know have never even really looked at what these menus do, and once you kind of get it set up, it's really not as scary as it sounds. However, we'll talk about some of the things that you do need to consider as well. Because when you strip out everything out of the editor, you strip out lots of very important things. Like if you wanted to load in, say, a team's mesh, right? There's no mesh loader anymore. Yeah, there's no properties. Like, so you do really have to kind of consider these things when you go into it. One of them is scene control. Like for us, when I work in live events, like again, I've never have run it in like from a keyboard and mouse, like ever. And so we're going to use something, we're either going to use OSC or MIDI or DMX or UDP or something else to control it. So some of the stuff that It may or may not be the right choice for you though. I mean, there's so many ways to get data in and out of the engine. Obviously, it's a game engine. This is exactly what it's designed to do. There's so much network infrastructure around gaming that you will definitely find the thing for you. So here's a couple of the tools that I know a couple of yours, but I was going to mention Mixer. This is one that I know Brian talked about yesterday, and so yeah. Packaged application, again, one of these kind of funny things that like popped up in my brain. And I was talking to Eric about it, that I was like, it's exactly that. Like, so they're using this application, they're running it live on the Quasar stage at Coachella last year, and it's a packaged application that's being controlled remotely by a VJ or whoever it happens to be. But yeah, really, really interesting stuff. Like, why did he package it? Same reason that a lot of us do. We're trying to make it easier. If you give an artist the Unreal editor, they're immediately dumbfounded the first time they open it. They it looks like a DCC. It kind of operates like one for a little while, but at that point they're like, I don't know what the heck this is. I don't know what I'm doing. And so the same thing. He was like, all right, if I give it to him in a package that looks familiar, looks something like another software application that they've already seen, much easier for them to kind of just absorb it. But yeah, tell them just a tad about what you guys were doing.
Yeah. So I mean, at Emissive Labs, we do interactive and immersive experiences is what we focus on, and some of them can be one-off kind of deployed applications. We also, what I'm going to get into with Venue 4D is more of a product that we deliver and support. But either way, for the most part, what we're delivering using Unreal are controlled via external interface. So whether it's data or whether it's how you're operating it. We worked on the indoor golf league scoreboard, an early iteration of it to take the timing and scoring information and parse it into an application for them in Arena. And so that was something we did a couple years ago. And then, yeah, it's a big part of what we do is kind of externalizing all the
I mean, definitely
data.
Anything in sports is all about data.
Yeah.
Especially now more than ever. You cannot see anything on TV without there being something about betting, right? And that's all data. It's all the same stuff. So, but yeah, I know you've got some stuff you wanted to run through and show a little bit more about how Venue works. So.
Yeah, so I've mentioned quite a bit that we'll be talking about Venue. This is a bit of a case study within this concept. It really kind of, we developed Venue 4D as a necessity that we saw in the industry for arenas, primarily high school, college arenas, to be able to populate real-time content in their arenas for live events. And so I'll show a quick demo reel of some of the graphics, some of the paks that we've kind of included, and then I'll go into some of the details about how the product works and why we chose to pack it and more. So Venue 4D is, we call it a new dimension in graphics for a number of reasons, but we're basically trying to streamline and simplify the process of getting graphics into arenas. Like I said, it's built for high schools, colleges, and kind of minor league. We're not going after pro level arenas at this point. It's kind of a different ball game. But these schools and kind of smaller events, they have an amazing opportunity with the displays that they have in Venue to iterate on content and to put new types of graphics, sponsorship opportunities. And so what we're really trying to do with this is just open up the opportunities that products like Unreal Engine offer and the capabilities that Unreal Engine offers to those clients. And I think like the problem that we're kind of trying to solve for them, because why wouldn't we just distribute Unreal Engine as the editor and kind of be the creative service leg to support that? We want to not just offer a product. We're not just doing this so that we can sell a product, but we want to expand the amount of people that are able to have access to it, accessibility to it. And so what we're trying to do is make a very simple application, a very simple UI that streamlines a lot of the processes and development tools that you see in Editor that we deal with every day and we love, and make it really simple and easy for them to use, because then, not every graphics operator is an operator. So I think like in the pillars of kind of what our product is looking to do and why we package as an application and we deliver that, because there's a lot of heavy lifting that comes with that on our end, is to simplify the user experience, to optimize performance and stability.
Definitely simplify.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And to streamline the distribution and support that we're going to have to kind of take on as somebody that's delivering a product. And so just to hone in on a few of those, kind of double click on them. The user experience, this is a work in progress, and it will be based on the client's feedback. But we've kind of developed what we think is a system that not just a trained graphics operator can use, but somebody could come into the arena as an intern or a student or a TA, and they could basically learn the system and be populating graphics within minutes. And generally that means within hours or days, but the goal is minutes. And so some of the pillars to that and to the product is a simple button-based system to play out prompts. It's really not all that different than kind of the remote control iPad app concept, if you will, in virtual production. We've just taken it to a little bit of a different level, with what you can do customization-wise. The other ones to mention are display setup. So every venue is different. Every venue has a different set of requirements. So we focused quite a bit on that. I'll show some examples of kind of what our outputs look like for these, but we have kind of what we call a canvas configurator. It's up on the top right, a display setup, and it allows them to, within minutes, kind of drag and drop, click how many canvases you need, how many outputs you need, drag and drop the display resolutions, kind of configure it like you would in, like, I guess, in an end display or in another system. And that aspect of it alleviates the pain point of them. They obviously, when we onboard them, send us what they need, but they can set this up themselves. And that's a huge advantage to be able to set that up. And then, I think like the last one is, to mention is really on the bottom right. Like, this isn't necessarily a packaging specific solution, but when you do externalize this into a product, you have the opportunity, or into a kind of a productized application, you have the opportunity to streamline different pieces of their production workflow. So not all logos are created equally, and we know that. And so like this is a small example of a little tool that we built in that can drag and drop an SVG in, kind of it picks from that which colors they would assume are the primary, secondary for the teams if it's a logo. And it formats that and sends a logo directly to the application that can be used live. And it's formatted 512 by 512, which they would never know why they need to do that. So there's kind of some specific workflow enhancements that we've been able to achieve by doing that.
Nice.
Yeah, and then the second main pillar, I guess, is more technical. It's to optimize for performance. This is at a high level, it's really just about, we want to provide the best graphics we can. We want to use Lumen, we want to use Nanite, we want to shoot for the stars, and then kind of backtrack from there. We know our target hardware that we're shipping, so that helps a lot.
Yep.
A lot.
It does.
But
it really does.
we just knew early and often when we did this that if we can achieve packaging and shipping in that way, that we're going to be able to increase the performance. And load times. I think compilation, you mentioned, compiling shaders in real time and things like that. So just some performance and stability kind of notes that we saw as benefits to doing this type of thing.
Absolutely. The load time is a huge one. And because the first time you open a project and you just kind of go to lunch, right? Like, I don't know, you can't really do that, right? When you're loading it into a venue that's always live.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and I mentioned the canvas. This is probably a big question for those of you who do work in kind of in arena or in venue. This is an example that hopefully I can pull back up after this on on the demo, but one of our clients, this was their configuration that they needed. So there's, on the right, I guess I'll start on the right, is, kind of their main Jumbotron feed, which is we're sending out a 1080p signal. And that populates 4 monitors. And then on the left is kind of the ancillary or secondary monitors that are scattered throughout the arena and also in the concourses, and then ribbon boards. I can discuss a little bit about how we're kind of handling the graphics with those and responsiveness, if you will. But essentially, that's a bit of the beauty of Unreal, is that it's a real-time system. And so technically, you can render at any resolution in real time. And so we've built some tools in to allow when the canvas mapper tells the graphic that's being loaded what the resolution is that it needs, it kind of conforms the graphic. And we have 2 main modes. We have a main graphic mode and a ribbon board mode. And we kind of design each scene to accommodate for those 2 options. So here's just a quick image example of that client and the use of it. I think up in the top left and down on the court, you can see the ribbon boards. And then there's kind of score tables, score boxes on the court on the bottom right. And then, this was one of our first clients. They've been really gracious, USF, to give us a lot of feedback and kind of do R&D at their facility. But the graphics operator learned this, like I said, a couple hours before. And I think that if you just consider with deploying an app like this, the onboarding time for somebody like that,
Sure.
I think that it's
shorter than the editor.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if you like can speak at all to that, to like when you do kind of deploy this, how much maintenance you have to do on it in terms of training, or how much you guys are kind of controlling it.
I mean, generally speaking, the idea behind me shipping an application is I don't want to be there. These are places usually where there isn't necessarily a technical person who knows Unreal very well. And so there was probably a systems tech or somebody like that there, but odds are really good if I needed to tell them, hey, so can you open up the console variable and turn this on or off? Like, they have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Especially you think about something like a theme park or something like that too, which I know they did a big talk about that at Minions yesterday, but yeah, that whole thing was packaged. And a big part of that was, again, performance was #1 concern, I think, but also just, you're just tuning it down to the bare bones of like what you actually need. And yeah, you learn how to play that game while you're standing in line. Yeah. So it literally only takes you a couple of minutes, but it obviously plays a lot more like a game. So I think most people can kind of get it, but this still does apply in almost any other place that we've been shipping applications.
Yeah. And I think we talked about this. This came from my kind of section of this. We talked about it already, delivering content in these packs. The only thing I'll just add is that, we want to deliver kind of a marketplace of graphics that come with the system. And we want to update that, frequently, monthly. And our clients, want to do things like themed events. They want to do things like military awareness, or appreciation, I should say, or awareness games. And they wouldn't necessarily have the budget to hire and supply their arena with a custom package just for that event. But if we can provide a small kit that's built around those themes, and they can find it and that it's available to them, then it does give them the opportunity to keep their arena fresh, keep the content in their arena fresh each and every game. And I think that, so that's what it's kind of all about. Yeah, so either way, I showed you guys the example of it in Arena. This was just the operator controlling the graphics, and I promise you they work when they're running in real time. It's just the pre-rendered stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, right. So I know this is something that we talked about,
Yeah.
but at the same time, this is something that I deal with all the time for sure. Again, there's very few times where I've ever had a mouse and keyboard available to me at an event. It's just not a very effective way to run a lot of things, especially if you are trying to watch a screen while you're doing something. And so just being able to extend it right now with the remote API is actually working very well. We've been using it quite a lot, but inside of that, there's also so many other ways that we can do this. Like, I know you said you're doing a lot more of your stuff through actual data-driven, so you're actually getting like a feed of like what stats are, what things are like, happening. Usually some kind of JSON format, of course, and you're just scraping out what you need. But there's a lot of these tools that are just, that I use day in and day out, and they definitely work. They're a lot more robust than just trying to get somebody to kind of like click on things or, God forbid, use an iPad or something like that. But you can do it if you wanted to.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. So in this example, what I was showing was, we wanted to also use the power of Unreal. And what the power in the sense that I mean is like, you can obviously take in and out graphics, and that's the core of what our system does. But also there's all these amazing, I've been at the sessions this week and learning about the audio interactivity, learning about all the different ways that you can kind of gamify the experience once it's loaded. And so the VJ concept, if you will, like we want to employ like buttons, in that sense, MIDI controls, Steam Deck controls that allow you to crank up the volume. And what that volume may be is the camera shake in the graphic and things like that. And that's where things really get interesting for the operators when they see that and they say they can have, kind of like instant control of something when it's on screen. It's a really cool kind of gamified feature for them. And it also allows them to react in real time to the audience. So this is an interesting one. So in Arena, one of the clients came to us and said, we're really interested in the prompts, but we also want to run games. And we're shipping a game engine, and so essentially it was hard for us to argue. And so what we did in this case, we built this in 2 weeks. And it's a proof of concept that we built where on the bottom right, you basically have a mobile web-based mobile game that each one of the participants in the arena would play. On the top right is what would be on the Jumbotron. It's obviously a proof of concept that we've been putting together. And what the arena participants are doing, they'll scan a code, it launches them into the game. Everybody starts at the same time, and they're playing this game on their phone to kind of increase their score. If they miss the little pickups, it slows them down. The top 3 players will end up on the Jumbotron in a race that's on the top right, in this example. And then there's a leaderboard that's kind of UMG based that shows like the top 20 and rotates through them. And so everyone's kind of racing to essentially get themselves onto the leaderboard. And see themselves on screen. This is a previs that we built for what will actually go into the Jumbotron. And so it's interesting. You can't have 1,000.
Sponsored by Kia.
What's that?
I said sponsored by Kia. But,
yeah.
But that is important, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, and sponsors do love this stuff. It's an activation for them. It's something different than the badge that's on the graphic. And so we're always looking for opportunities to just, integrate sponsors into the graphics in kind of new ways. And yeah, I think this is something we're really interested in, is kind of engagement with the fans and ways to keep them kind of immersed in what's going on screens. And it's an interesting challenge too, because if you have 1,000 or more participants that are playing, how can you kind of gamify their experience on a main screen? You can't have 1,000 people running on it, or maybe you can, I don't know, some type of Lemmings game or something.
The only one that works is trivia.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
So just a little previs of kind of what that will look like. And yeah, and if you're wondering kind of like networking wise, I think I showed in the kind of confusing 3 video example, we built a data infrastructure application for Unreal and for other apps, but essentially it kind of networks Unreal Engine to web-based applications, and it's available. It's Chauncey Lab. You're free. It's free to use at this point. So go on and take advantage. But it's just a really cool way, an easy way for you to connect whatever game you've built in Unreal to be controlled externally. So if you are going to package something and you just want to R&D how you would control that without building an interface, this is a really simple way to just try it out at first. This does package. You can package it with it and with the game and. Yeah. And then, yeah, I think we're kind of running low on time, so I'll just finish up here. I just want to mention, our goal is not to replace the editor tools. It's never been the goal. We want to use them, as creative tools, and we want to use all of them. Cloners and everything that comes with it is so powerful. But we're really just kind of extending that tooling. So, and abstracting it so that our end users don't have to worry about the development kind of aspects of it. And I think, yeah, just as a summary,
Yeah, I don't think we need to repeat it for sure. But I mean, it definitely was. The benefits are significant, and that was really the biggest thing that we realized. It's just like it was too much to turn down. And I know at some point, like a lot of people probably don't remember this, but like you used to have to package and display. Like it was the only way it ran because that was just the way that it worked. But now, obviously, we don't have to do that in every case now. But it was something that I feel like after that, and there were certain, I remember Zero Density, I remember they had cooking, hardware to help you deal with this kind of stuff, and it ran a lot better when you cooked it. But the problem was, again, just people, it seemed like one of these things where it's like, isn't that almost just like taking it and isn't that just doing rendering at that point? And I was like, well, it's not that slow. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of people just kind of blow right by it, and it's something really that can really supercharge your workflow, because like nothing really annoys me more than when I have to take a really nice rendering feature and turn it off because I'm not hitting perf. And if I can get back 8 milliseconds, I can turn on almost anything, almost, right? So, all right, let's see here. Got anything new?
I think.
Q&A?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice to have you all. Enjoy and with us. Come to the party tonight.